dependent on technology. We are getting very close to this becoming reality because if you look around, we are already surrounded by it. We have massive televisions in every home and business. We have supercomputers that we carry in our pockets. We have self-driving cars now, we have robotic factories, and the list goes on and on. On the surface, this all seems massively beneficial to our everyday lives. Have you ever stopped to wonder, though, if this stuff is actually harmful? I'm going to be the bearer of bad news today and tell you that it is, especially for a child's brain. Now, let me explain how it affects the brain, both physically and psychologically. Research has shown that the brain actually changes its neurological structure depending on how much time is spent in front of the screen. This means thickening in some areas and thinning in others. Dr. Douglas Fields is a neuroscientist and professor at the University of Maryland. He wrote an article discussing a research study that was done in 2013 by Japanese neurologists. Now, this study was the first one of its kind to see if television actually affected the brain structure. This study observed 290 children between the ages of 5 and 18 who were instructed to watch 0 to 4 hours of television each day. Now, the results were the children who viewed the most television had a thicker frontal lobe region of the brain. Now, Dr. Fields explains that this frontal lobe region is where we get our ability to plan and multitask and solve problems, and it helps out with our verbal communication. And it's been known that thickening in this area has lowered verbal or language-based reasoning abilities. Further testing in the study showed that the children who did indeed watch more television had a lower verbal IQ than those who watched less. And this was the same result regardless of the child's sex, the parent's educational background, or household income. And the children who had the lower verbal IQ also had a bulkier hypothalamus, septum, sensory motor, and visual cortex areas. Dr. Fields explains that a few responsibilities that these hold are the emotional response, arousal, aggression, and vision. Thickening in the hypothalamus is actually a characteristic of borderline personality disorder patients, and it's seen in patients with an increased aggression after viewing violent entertainment. Now, he says that watching television is a very passive activity. It requires you to do literally nothing. And it essentially limits the development of the intellectual abilities while the emotional side is being overloaded. So you can see that it actually changes the shape of the brain while watching television. Now let me explain the psychological portion. A child and adult psychiatrist by the name of Dr. Victoria Dunkley coined the term electronic screen syndrome from her time observing children who spend more than 7 hours each day in front of the screen. She noticed that these children were suffering from a sensory overload, a lack of restorative sleep, and a hyperaroused nervous system. Now this means that they basically were moody, impulsive, and they couldn't focus. In her article pertaining to screen time, she referred to a study that showed shrinkage in gray matter areas of the brain, with the most concerning area being the insula. Now the gray matter area of the brain means the part that surrounds the spinal cord. The insula is a part of the brain that controls and activates our empathy and compassion towards others, while also integrating physical signals with those emotions. She claims that shrinkage in this area causes desensitization in children and young adults, which is linked to violent behavior. Now, watching television, when you're watching television, your brain is releasing dopamine. It's being stimulated by entertainment, releasing dopamine. After constant hours of watching television, this constant release of dopamine, it forms addiction. And with children, that means that they're not going to be happy doing anything other than watching television or sitting in front of the screen. Now this leads to a lack of physical exercise, which could cause child obesity, and then a numerous amount of other health problems. This same principle applies to adults as well. And a perfect example is Netflix and binge watching television shows. I mean, you sit on the couch hours a day doing nothing, your body is going to become more fatigued. It actually slows down your metabolic rate, and which results in weight gain. Now, I understand that this information is kind of hard to grasp because we have to admit to ourselves that we are the problem, that we are causing this issue. And I will agree with most that technology is amazing, it's fascinating, and it does make our lives easier every day. With that being said, the same benefits that technology provides us are not beneficial to the developing brain of a child. A child's brain grows at a very fast rate. Within the first year, it grows nearly 300%. That is a massive amount of brain growth and sensory development. If you would, please close your eyes for a minute and visualize something for me. Imagine two children around the ages of one. One child is watching and playing with a virtual ball on a screen, a two-dimensional object. The second child is playing with an actual ball, a three-dimensional object. Now, child A, the one who is on the phone, it seems happy because dopamine is being released, but is only stimulating her visual cortex, her eyes, and the emotional side of her brain. Child B is getting to experience what the ball feels like. She gets to experience how heavy the ball is, the shape of the ball, maybe how the ball tastes, and then realizes that it doesn't taste good and it's not food. This child is learning through a natural process of figuring it out, developing key senses and motor skills, whereas child A is merely being mesmerized by pretty colors and sound. So I've discussed with you how technology and television affects the brain, both physically and psychologically. Now it's up to you to decide how you'll use this